My father wasn't a perfect man. I haven't forgotten the nights with loud arguments and empty bottles. But I do know, with the benefit of hindsight, that my father did his best. Once upon a time, he might have been good at it. Fatherhood. My mom used to think so. She used to talk about how excited he was when I was born. Then something changed. My mother, my siblings, and even I sometimes like to pretend that we couldn't remember what changed him. It was easier to tell ourselves that his mind or his heart had just shifted. He'd just become calloused, as tired men sometimes do. But we saw it. We saw what happened to him. How could we forget? It was 20 years ago now. I was young, still in grade school. We were living out in the rural Midwest on a piece of property that used to be farmland. We couldn't keep up with it. It didn't feel like a loss, admitting that we weren't farmers. Our family made money in other ways, and we did all right financially. What we did miss out on, however, was neighbors. The closest one was miles away. That meant when the night came, we didn't have any witnesses. We were the only ones who could have possibly believed our story. Of course, we did our best to forget it. We were happier pretending they never came. Who wants to live their life afraid of the sky itself? I remember the dry thunder of that summer season. It sounded like the sky was splitting apart as my siblings and I began the bedtime routine of brushing our teeth and avoiding our parents. If they didn't see us right away, sometimes we'd get to stay up an entire half hour before they made us turn the lights out. You had a routine like that too, right? Anyways, we failed. We were spotted early and we found ourselves in the dark soon enough. It would have been easy to sleep. The thunder made it easy, if it wasn't for the lights that appeared just a few minutes later. They burst in through the windows, burning through our blinds as if the fabric wasn't even there. It was suddenly daylight in our room. We ran, confused and frightened, downstairs to meet our parents. Mom stopped us before we could get too far. Dad was already outside. He always told us that one day the soy production plant at the edge of the nearest town might explode. When he told that story, he made it sound like the explosion would be our own little nuclear bomb. That's what I was imagining as I watched my father's silhouette through the front doorway. He was walking into nuclear territory. The lights changed colors and began to swirl. Suddenly it sounded like we were under one constant drone of thunder. I wonder now if the lights had been using the storm as cover, or had they created the storm themselves? It was the perfect camouflage, wasn't it? None of us knew what was coming. We could see our dad in the front lawn. He was looking up, arms down at his sides. He hadn't run out there to play hero, chasing off the invaders on his property. He was in awe. We all were. Then he disappeared. The lights blinked out of existence, the thunder stopped, and Dad was gone. There was an empty spot on the grass where his silhouette had last been. One by one, we wandered out there to search for him. He was nowhere to be found. Our mother called the police and they searched too, but they didn't believe our story about the thunder and the lights. They left as all empty-handed and empty-hearted. None of us went back to bed. 2 days later, after we ran dry of tears, Dad came back. He was disoriented and dehydrated, but hardly worse for wear. He downed 2 full glasses of water and went back to living as normal. When we told him 2 days had passed, he froze. He swallowed something heavy in his throat, then he scoffed. He let it roll off his back like that encounter was just another night. He had nightmares after that. Screamed sometimes, waking up the whole house. I didn't envy my mother sleeping beside him. He grew distant. He talked less. You've seen somebody shut themselves off before, haven't you? One day they're there and the next day they're just not. The body's still moving, but the mind's somewhere else. That was what happened to our father. There wasn't much we could do to change it, except talk some more with law enforcement and local doctors. We wanted to help him, and we wanted to know what happened that night. None of them were any use. Most, as a matter of fact, turned us away. Even the doctors who said they'd take our insurance got cold feet. Sometimes it seemed like they wanted to help, and then they just wouldn't. It was like somebody was pulling their leash, you know? They'd try to reach out to us, they'd get real close, and then the world would yank them back. Maybe they were just scared. Maybe someone told them not to help. I'll never know the truth of that. What I do know is that my father did his best, and no other family should have to deal with what we endured. Nobody deserves that, least of all the ones who disappear. Because it's happened to others, you know? It's happened to other people that nobody wants to believe. I guess it requires a certain sacrifice admitting that there's something unknowable out there. If we hadn't faced it, maybe we'd feel the same way. For now, I just want to warn you. Some people say that these things, when they show up, they're absolutely silent. That wasn't what we encountered. Sometimes they come in the thunder. We thought we heard a woman screaming. That's why we went into the woods. It sounded like a woman plain as day. There had been a few stories about our property being cursed or haunted, and every once in a while that lured out the teenagers. This was something different. This wasn't a joke. My brother grabbed his rifle and I grabbed a flashlight. Whatever was going on with her, the woman's blood-curdling screams meant something was wrong. It was safer to have a weapon on hand. We threw on our jackets and charged into the woods. The autumn chill still nipped at our faces, but we were determined to ignore the weather and to find whoever was out in those trees. They needed our help. Another shriek gave us our direction. We called to them. We made a lot of noise, hoping to guide the woman to us. But the closer we got, and the more we made ourselves known, the quieter the stranger became. The screaming was more spaced out. It faded into a sort of animalistic bleating, then to a whimper. Then she was silent and we were alone in the trees. We were sure she was there. We wondered if maybe someone or something had made her quiet down. We stupidly decided to split up. Looking back, that was the biggest mistake we could have made. What if the woman had run into trouble? We were just going to shoot our way out or bludgeon the problem with our flashlight. I don't know what we were thinking, I'll be the first to admit that. Hearing someone scared or hurt, hearing it coming from our family's property, we felt compelled to act. We never even considered the alternative. I wish now that we had. After all, it wasn't a woman in those woods. It was just a thing that sounded human. My first glimpse of it was a white flash crossing the beam of my flashlight. It looked like a horse or a cow, but it was moving too quickly for me to get a good look. The trees around me were too tightly spread for an animal that big to navigate them anyway. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The next scream came from directly beside me. I jumped, turned, and tripped over my own legs. Fear quickly turned them into jello. I pedaled backward on my hands, sprawled like a crab on the ground. My flashlight had rolled away from me. When it came to rest, the beam was pointed directly at the thing screaming for our attention. It stood like a man, sure, but it couldn't have been one. Its body, thick and muscular, was covered head to toe in a smoke-white fur. The hair was short and curly, matted close to its body and speckled by leaves and dirt. Its eyes were wide and its jaw protruded from its face like an animal. It didn't have a nose as much as it had two bare nostrils that flared with every breath. Its broad shoulders climbed as it inhaled and watched me. Then it screamed again. I watched its lips peel back to reveal teeth that looked strangely human, arranged in some unnatural way to fit the monster's misshapen mouth. I crouched there, cowering in fear. My hands went up to cover my ears as my eyes began to close. Then the creature's wails were interrupted by a gunshot. You always can count on your siblings, can't you? I heard the bullet sail over my head. The monster gasped and sailed backward, spinning on the heels of its hooved feet. Its back crashed into a tree trunk and it soon crumpled to the ground. It fell out of the flashlight's beam. My brother yelled, asking if I could see it. I couldn't. I dove for the torch and raised it, trying to find the creature in the woods again. We both knew instinctively that the monster wasn't dead. It was too big for one bullet to do the job. I caught the flash of white again, this time stained red, disappearing into the midnight woods. We tried to chase it. Whatever it was, we couldn't let it linger on our property. We resolved to take the thing down and drag it into the light of day. Then we'd figure out what it was. We'd discover the truth behind the massive animal and keep it from scaring anyone else in the process. We picked up its blood trail. We followed it as closely as we could. But eventually it must have stopped bleeding. We recovered a patch of white fur on the tree it first crashed into, but that was the extent of our proof. We had a clump of fur and a frightening story. Neither the hair nor the details we shared convinced much of anyone of the thing in our woods. We tried to put a party together, a group that could track it over the course of a few days. No one wanted any part of monster hunting, go figure. That left the resolution up to us. We set traps. We camped out in the area we'd first seen it. We stayed up all hours of the night listening for the scream. It never came again. We never got another reason to go trekking into those woods. Maybe we were wrong and it only took one bullet after all. My brother and I doubt that. There would have been a body, there would have been remains to find and headlines to write. What we've got is nothing. Fur and a story. But it came to us recently. Maybe what we saw wasn't so one of a kind. Maybe someone else has seen the smoke-white monster in another set of woods. Maybe near to us, who knows? Maybe in another state altogether. Have you seen it? Have you heard it? If so, you only need to say the word. Me and my brother came running once and we'd gladly do it again. Nobody should have to deal with that thing alone. I grew up in the woods of northern Minnesota. There are things out there in the wild lands that locals don't like to talk about. Small-town secrets, I suppose. Most of them were harmless. Others, not so much. The area I lived in was about as far north as you could get before you crossed over into Canada. The nearest town had less than 100 people, including my family. As a kid, we had all these rules. Everybody's family had them. My parents said it was to keep us safe from predators. Don't go out after dark. Don't go into the woods alone. And if you smell something dead, get away and get inside as quick as you can. There's probably a bear nearby protecting its kill. We had wolves, black bears, and mountain lions in the area, so it made perfect sense to us. Everybody's parents had the same rules. I mean, my backyard was practically a bear highway if there was such a thing. It would be easy to have an encounter go bad if you weren't careful. There were 2 stories of people disappearing in the town. Both were attributed to incidents with wildlife. One was a man out alone in the woods. It was the 1920s or 30s, if my memory serves. He lived pretty far out there. The cabin he built for himself has since been torn down, but the foundation is still there if you know where to look. Anyway, the story I heard was that he didn't show up for work one day, and when they went to check on him, they found the door to his cabin left open but no sign of him anywhere. They searched around the cabin and could smell what they thought was a carcass, but they couldn't find it. They looked everywhere but couldn't find the source of the smell. His death was blamed on a black bear. They figured the bear cached his body somewhere, explaining the smell. Predatory black bears attacks are rare, but they do happen. The other incident was a kid in 1983, walking home from friend's house alone. It was only about a mile walk, but the roadway passed through the woods. Kid never made it there. That's the story everybody's parents always used to scare them into following the rules. The investigation couldn't find any trace of that kid or what happened. They found what looked like moose tracks near the area, but that was it. No other predators. To be honest, it could have been a moose. Those things are dangerous. However, I think it was something else entirely. When I was about 12 years old, I was best friends with the neighbor girl. The easiest way to get to her house was a deer trail that started in my backyard and ran about a half mile through the woods. My parents were very strict with me about the rules. I wasn't allowed to use the trail after dusk. I had to tell them when I was leaving and had to call them from my friend's house as soon as I arrived, and I had to carry bear spray at all times. I had run into bears before out there without a problem. Normally you just yell and wave your arms and they run away. It's only when they have cubs that you need to worry, but I kept my bear spray close, always. There was one day that I was walking home on the trail. It was at least an hour before dusk, I know that much. If I was out even near dusk, I would have been in so much trouble. I probably wouldn't have been allowed to leave my room until high school graduation. That's how serious the rules were. I thought the rules were to protect me from bears, but that wasn't it at all. There's something else that lives in the woods up there, and it's a lot more dangerous than a black bear. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it got. A sudden silence just washed itself over the woods. It was like I was in a movie and someone pushed mute. I remember seeing leaves blowing in the wind, but I couldn't hear them moving. That's when I smelled it. It was the foulest thing I have smelled in my life, and I've walked up on near week-old roadkill. This was worse. It was definitely the stench of something dead, but there was something else there too. Like if you've ever smelled a really bad infection. That's the best I can describe it. I immediately knew I was in trouble. My parents said if I ever smelled anything dead, there was likely a predator nearby. I pulled the safety stopper off the trigger of the bear spray I was carrying and held it up in front of me. I remember I pulled my shirt up over my nose, hoping the material would somehow stifle the smell. Then I looked out at the trail ahead of me. There was a tiny rabbit sitting there out in the open. Its eyes were wide and it was shivering, but it didn't move. I don't know why it didn't just run. I heard something moving behind me, something walking. They were hoofbeats. I had my bear spray in my hand, ready to use it in case it was a moose. I turned around and what I saw will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was about the size of an elk. It had the body of an elk and the antlers of an elk. Full antlers, even in the summer. Its hair was peeling off, exposing areas of raw flesh and even the bones underneath. It was leaking from its wounds. There were flies buzzing around it like it was a corpse. It definitely smelled like a corpse, but it seemed to have no trouble walking. I pointed the bear spray at its face and then I froze. It had no face. Its head was a bare skull. Bone white. The skin was hanging loose around its neck. The skull was stripped completely bare. It had no eyes, no nose. It walked straight past me like I wasn't even there and went straight for the rabbit. The stupid rabbit didn't even try to run. The undead elk grabbed it with its teeth and threw it up in the air like a coyote does and then swallowed it whole. It might have not had eyes or a nose, but it did appear to have a tongue. Its jaw cracked when it opened its mouth. After watching it make quick work of the rabbit, I ran. I didn't want to stay and find out what it might do to me. As soon as I saw it, I knew this was the creature responsible for the disappearances. It had to be, and I wasn't going to be its next victim. The only form of defense I had was the bear spray. I don't imagine it would work on this thing. I never took that trail through the woods again. My parents caught on as soon as I started asking them to drive me to my friend's house instead of walk. They asked me if I saw it, and I said yes. And that was the end of the conversation. They never told me what it was, and I never asked. There are things you just don't talk about in towns like this, and just because people don't talk about them doesn't mean they don't exist. I was working as a forest ranger up here in Anchorage when this happened. My job at the time was to patrol the remote areas of the park, making sure nobody ever lit fires they weren't supposed to or threw litter where they weren't supposed to. I was equipped with my own radio and had a rifle with me at all times in case I had to deal with any squatters or crazy people who came into the woods looking to do bad things. It was just before midnight on a Friday evening. I'd been patrolling an area called Barney Creek. I hadn't noticed anything unusual happening, so I wasn't expecting anything bad to happen that night. But all that completely changed when I found a deceased person, a skeleton. More on that in just a second. On my way back to my car is when I saw this body lying across the trail that I'd been walking on. At first, I thought it was maybe an animal due to the condition that the body was in. But as I got closer and looked again, I realized it wasn't a bear corpse or any other animal from the woods. This was obvious because there was no fur covering its flesh. It had obviously died quite a while ago too. After shining my flashlight around the area more thoroughly, with a sense of growing apprehension tapping into whatever bravery might be needed, I slowly approached the remains. I took out my camera before beginning to take pictures of the evidence. I was not prepared for what I saw when I moved closer in to take a look at the skull. It was pretty badly rotted, and there appeared to be a bullet hole right behind the left eye socket. Some brutal execution must have happened, maybe even torture, judging by how bony and ripped out their chest area looked. Whoever they were, somebody wanted them dead, and the killer would not accept any opposition from this person they were going after. This meant that whoever killed them was still around, and they'd be coming back. They could have been waiting out for me in the forest, possibly planning to take out their sick revenge on me. I had one mission: to get out of there as soon as possible and alert the authorities for backup. I had to run back as fast as I could, which was hard with how freaked out and terrified I was. Still getting lost and having a hard time recognizing the trails. My head was a mess, and every time a branch or leaf would brush against me, I just suspected it was something that would kill me. Kind of like a monster's claw reaching up from behind bushes, ready to grab me by the neck and snap it like a twig. My heart raced with so much fear that I swear it felt as if it were almost going to pop out of my chest. Without any warning at all, and after what seemed like forever, I got far away but just collapsed onto the forest floor, completely exhausted. I was there until morning. As soon as morning arrived, I was successful in returning to the area, but the remains were gone. I couldn't tell if somebody had come in and taken them, or maybe some animal decided to bury the body under some dirt or leaves. In any case, it didn't matter much because no one was going to find out who killed that person. But I realized afterwards whoever did it might have been looking for me now too. It's best not to say anything about my experience now while I'm still working as a ranger. Look, I don't know what happened, but here in Alaska at night, those skeletal remains still haunt me. I've never seen a cadaver at all, let alone in that bad condition, but all I can say is, why didn't everybody just stay away from this area? Why did this happen? Who's this poor soul that got killed? It definitely looked malicious, like somebody had just left the body there. I mean, that's kind of obvious. Had it been an animal, it would have been eaten or torn apart or buried. But the body had been there for a while, and there were no signs of any animals even touching it. How strange. Almost paranormal, if you will. Being a ranger isn't always easy. Sure, I get to see some of the most beautiful scenery in the country and talk to people from all walks of life. In addition, it is a great career for someone like me who just loves being outdoors. However, dealing with those who are uninformed and do not understand the park rules or how our park society actually works can be difficult at times. And a lot of them don't even realize that the rules are there to protect them from things they couldn't even imagine. I once read something on a Reddit thread about how Stephen King must have had a park ranger on retainer to get story ideas. While I highly doubt that it is true, we do see stuff that I bet most horror writers couldn't even dream of. One thing that never fails to freak me out, no matter how many times it happens, and it is way more often than you would think, is when you come across something that has absolutely no right to be there, and you have no clue how it could have possibly gotten there. Staircases being discovered, okay, you might think at some point there must have been a building many years ago, and all that's left is the stairs. The only issue being that the trees surrounding the structure are hundreds of years old, and the stairs are not. So there couldn't possibly have been any building there, and none of the trees are damaged, and there is no route or trail leading up to the area for some big-time practical joker to plant it there for some YouTube show. They're just there. The same with abandoned cars. They appear in areas that have been looked at many times before, maybe on foot or with an ARV, but again, there is no way a truck, camper van, etc. could have gotten there. Yet we find them sometimes in a state of decay, showing the vehicle had been there for years, when in reality that area had been checked and reported back on only a few days ago. Sometimes when we check, the vehicles are registered to people who have been missing for years. Other times they just don't seem to exist in the system. And once in a while we find a person, sometimes alive, other times just a body. Sometimes they actually are hikers or hunters who've lost their way, and other times they are not. We have found people wandering around in places that had been checked only a few hours before, looking like they've been lost for days. When we finally manage to convince them that we are the good guys and want to help, we find that they've been missing for days and weeks and are not even from the US, let alone this area. The scariest part is that they have no idea how they got there. These are ordinary people who, at one moment, are sitting at a desk in Germany. The next thing you know, it's 3 weeks later, and they're here in America, having no idea how they ended up here. You won't find these sorts of reports on your local news, so don't bother looking. We take them straight to a government building and, well, they deal with it. So next time you are hiking and you've been doing it for years, and a ranger tells you not to go somewhere or you're hunting and they tell you to avoid a certain area, do what they say. We are not being a pain and trying to ruin your day. We are looking after you because something is out there, dumping bodies, cars, even people into our forests and parks. If something or someone is doing that, then maybe, just maybe, they are also taking things. And the hikers that go missing, just maybe, they were not dragged off by a bear or fell down a ravine and were eaten. Maybe they'll turn up somewhere in the middle of the desert in another country, and that country's government will come along and deal with them. And from what I've seen from the few moments I've spent in the company of one of those people, you do not want that to be you. Trust me on that one. My sighting happened in June of 2012. My father was undergoing chemo, and I decided to bring him out canoeing for an afternoon trip. We headed downriver to a secluded spot that we had been to once before. On our way there, my dog started acting funny, sniffing the ground and barking. That's when this large lizard thing began coming out of the trees. I began screaming, pointing at this creature, wondering what we were seeing. My father grabbed our canoe paddles and I began screaming for him to paddle us away, but this thing kept coming towards us. Now it was slithering quickly through the water toward us like some big water snake. Not swimming though, more flowing until it was only about 10 feet away from the canoe. Its head and body were above the water line. Then my dad reached in his pocket or something. I heard a gunshot go off and a spray of blood shot out of this creature. The sight made me almost vomit. Then it just sank down under the water. I blacked out after that for some time in complete and utter terror. The next thing I know, we are at our destination and my father is asking if I'm okay. That's when he tells me what happened. I'm shooting this creature, and then this thing disappearing underneath the water, and I had fainted. I was so terrified. My dad explained to me something large had come through us and added the water. He wasn't sure what it was. My dad was pale. I mean, I've never seen him like that before. Now, fast forward 15 years later, and my oldest son believes he's seen a similar creature when he was out in the forest with his own friends. He was rounding up this group of kids when he saw something that looked like a lizard. He said it stared at him for a moment, and when they all became aware of what he was seeing, the creature darted off. My son, who is now 21, has never told anybody about this until I mentioned my own sighting to him, not knowing if it was the same thing. It's weird because his friends and parents had reported strange, large, three-toed tracks around their house at nighttime. They would find these large feces piles as well as large scratches along the house and trees. I can only suspect it's this thing hanging around here. Look, I don't know if we somehow stumbled upon its territory or what, but I know it's here. My son has also seen it several more times since his initial sighting. The last time was not too long ago. He said this thing is beginning to get very, very violent. It's been destroying people's property, attacking and killing dogs. I'm still in shock by what we all saw those years ago, and never once did I ever believe in this kind of thing until that day. Now, I know for sure it existed and will continue to exist. I know I'm going to be attacked for what I'm saying, but if there's anybody else out there that has seen this thing, Let me know. We need some answers.